Rhoda Odigboh is a curriculum theorist, a learning strategist, and inclusion advocate. She is the vice president of PAC Inc., that's Professional Association of Curriculum Theorists in Nigeria, and the co-founder of the Learning Craft. She has keen interest in digital literacy, equity, and growing education, a lover of people and community development from the lens of quality and inclusive education. She supports African government in codifying education programs that apply methodologies rooted in the science of learning while developing sustainable systems. Her ultimate goal is to help education leadership deliver equitable learning achievements. She is a teacher, wife, and mother. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Rhoda Odigboh. Thank you so much. You know, thank you. You know, the issue of curriculum is something that we cannot stop talking about. I'm glad the essay is still here. Maybe you might still share a few things about curriculum development, curriculum design, and redesign, because that's one aspect of our education system that we also need to reform. You know, we just have, thank God now, our subjects have reduced. You know, at about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, students in GSS class, they were writing up to 17, 18 subjects. Many, but right now it has been collapsed into national values, pre-vocational studies, and all of that. So curriculum design and redesign is something that we need to do as well. So we have a specialist here. So, Madam Rhoda, thank you so much. You have the floor. Thank you, Madam.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Shay. I think you brought really this. You started out this series quite strongly, talking about teachers and talking about that entry, that portal where everybody experiences education, being the world and the universe of curriculum. So it's a great connection that you've made here. So well done, Shay, on that one. And I think, Shay, you wanted me to really just talk about. I don't think you wanted me to talk about curriculum reforms because that's a long conversation. But then you you wanted me to talk about contextualizing.
We have peculiar challenges in Nigeria, and so I have taught for a number of years now, and I know that one of the questions that my students will always ask me was, why are we learning English? After all, we can speak it, and so why, some of the things that we teach as our students, some of them are not relatable. How can we begin to, how can we have a curriculum that is structured in such a way that will solve our problem? How can we have a curriculum that will produce the kind of the future that we want? Because education, we say, is producing the future. And so the future of Nigeria is already in the classes right now. They are in the classes right now. And so Absolutely. What it means is that what they need to thrive outside, we have to give them in the classroom. And it is the curriculum that will do that. It is the content. So do we have the content that will produce the kind of humans that we want? Do we have the curriculum that will produce people that will be a part of the solutions to our problem and not become the problem again? So those are the questions I have in my mind about curriculum. I think I'd like you to just talk about this, and of course.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is like definitely a thesis to write out, but in the world of curriculum. But then I'll take it into like really bite-sized situations and just kind of like paint the whole idea of where those of us who theorize, are practitioners, who take the curriculum and try to put it in action, now need to know what to do. For me, I've always tried to tell as many people as possible that when we think about curriculum, think about it from the lens of the child, because the child is the last mile to curriculum in action. At the end of the day, whatever is written, whatever it becomes, whatever is the template, whether it's a national curriculum or a state scheme of work or a teacher's lesson plan, the end point is the child. And so when you think about the child, then you think about the reason why Seyi has said we should think about context, which is why I don't believe that once you have a curriculum that you must be delivered in the same exact way for everybody, because the contexts are always different and you must always be ready to deliver that curriculum per the context of the child. For one reason, for a couple of reasons, to make it concrete, to make it make sense, and then to make it be something that is a problem solver. These are the three things that we're looking for. There are global competencies, of course. There are global proficiencies that are expected, and there are global skills, knowledge, and values. And those things are common. Some of these big buzzwords these days are the 4 C's that are now extended to 7 C's, and some people have even included some 8th and 9th C. You know, we talk about charisma and character and things like that. So all of those still have their baseline around the big 4 C's that everybody wants every child to have. And I say this because whether we like it or not, it is the learner, whether the learner is in early childhood education, primary education, secondary education, tertiary education, that is the end point, the person that is at the last mile of curriculum. So when we think about the competencies that that person requires to function in life and work, then you then go back to your documents, your blueprints, whatever you call it, as your definition of curriculum. Some people's scheme of work is the curriculum, lesson plan is the curriculum, national curriculum is the curriculum, whatever it is that you choose to call it. The important thing is to make sure that you make those connections, that it is concrete to the person, meaning that the person can actually, the learner can actually take it and understand it because it is something they can relate to around the environment. 2, it needs to make sense. The person needs to make connection around those. And then 3, of course, it needs to be around problem solving. So if we're thinking about problem solving as the destination, then think that for you to contextualize a curriculum, what does context mean? Context, basically, if you take any dictionary and or even Google and type what context means, context is basically say, is a circumstance, right? First of all, the circumstance from an event, from a statement, from an idea, or anything that in terms that makes you to fully understand. So once you can get to full understanding, then you have a curriculum that is in context. And I could give you a couple of examples, concrete examples. For instance, and these are some of the ideas that drive me nuts sometimes when I think about how curriculum in action, which is supposed to be your contextualized curriculum. So I'm trying to make that connection. And the reason why I'm doing that is because you've often heard people say, oh, the national curriculum doesn't have a lot, but hey, it doesn't, but what can you do with it? And that's where curriculum in action comes to play. So you have a curriculum, you have whatever it is that's your document that you're using, and some concepts for me become a problem. I'll use the simple ones that everybody knows. You know, for instance, you know, when you get into, you pick say for example, you want to teach a child about you are trying to teach anybody, any learner, you are trying to, you know, make them to make sense out of a topic like, let me pick one. I'm thinking of one that is going to be generic to everybody. Let's say you want to get them to understand what, in biology, for example, you want students to, and your topic in biology then is about maybe bones or the muscular system. And then your curriculum basically stipulates, you know, the objectives, and it tells you a few of the activities and some of the resources that you would require. You as a teacher then needs to think about how you're going to implement this within your lesson plans or within the classroom experience. And then when you get there and you pick this document and that's what you are using to design your lessons, and you see that the children literally can't really make sense of this so-called muscular or skeletal system. What do? You then take that particular topic and begin to make it concrete. You follow the concrete stage. How am I going to make sure that these students find concrete examples of the muscular system? The second thing you're going to say to them, you're going to try to make it make sense to them. You start looking for, strategies within there that's going to allow them to make connections to the skeletal system. So they begin to use their bodies. You need to explain, like if you break a piece of cloth. And sometimes, look, I've been in the north where teachers have used everything around the environment to make a concept concrete. And then you show those examples of how a human being is unlikely to be able to stand up without a skeletal system. And then you then try to make it more applicable, where you then decide to say to your couple of students, how are you going to function without a skeletal system? And then they go ahead and start brainstorming into that whole idea. If I don't have a bone, what will I be? If I don't have a bone, how can I function? If I don't have, the things that they on their own would interpret out of the curriculum. So that's what when we talk about the word of concretizing, contextualizing curriculum, that's what we're trying to say. So there are three things that we do with curriculum. There is the teaching part, there is the learning part, and there is the assessment part, isn't it? And each one of them requires educators to rethink how they design the experience. If you're a teacher, what are you designing as your lesson plan? Because that's your entry point to the curriculum. If you're a student, for the learning experience, what is the teacher designing for the students to use? And those kinds of things. So again, how do we contextualize? First entry is language. Language is the first entry. How? You make sure that you are using the language that is relatable. Let me tell you, Sheyi, there are so many kinds of languages, right? There is the digital language these days. I hope you know that. There's digital language where we talk about digital literacy. Nowadays, a lot of teachers have just decided that they will not learn the digital language. And what sort of examples do we have in digital language? Some people are still in the world of note copying. And they copy notes from now to thy kingdom come. When you can get into the world of note making, that is how you contextualize. You have your learners actually make their notes, especially when they can access it from a digital platform. In the case where they cannot access it from a digital platform, like we have in most of our public education systems, then you can now say, oh, I need to then create this note for them in a way that they can use. Sometimes the teachers are unable to make prints or maybe to make, because it has cost implications. So in those particular settings, then you now have to rethink how you make that whole classroom experience work. We get to some universities, some lecturers are still, telling stories while they're teaching, and giving notes out to university students. And you are asking yourself, these university students don't need you giving them notes in the classroom. They need you to brainstorm with them, to give them collaborative activities, to tell them to get engaged in in various projects, to have them volunteering within the school system to actually experience that concept themselves. So if you're a mechanical engineer, there are so many engineering outfits within the university that you can go and engage with. And start building and start having some initiatives and those kinds of things. So from a language perspective, there is a digital language and then there's a local language. I am a proponent for multilingualism in the classroom. I know that it used to be said that we should use the mother tongue to teach. And my own simple argument there is, it's not as much as using the mother tongue to teach, to contextualize. Is more like people would say, is the language of instruction that matters. This is what I would say. The language of clarification is what matters, because it is what makes the child connect to that learning that is the key thing. So it could be multiple languages that they use depending on your context. So if you are somewhere in the East and a child does not really understand the concept of gravity, then you can use your Igbo language to sort of like explain it. However, the child needs to understand the vocabulary of gravity, because Igbos did not design the gravity word. Isaac Newton did not come from, Nigeria. So the concept of gravity came to us with the language that, the language of the Western language. Now, what you need to do is to make sure that whoever is the educator there is now trying to contextualize gravity and bring it to the language of the environment and use very many examples. You know, that if you look within our the curriculum, and even if you wanted to change almost everything in the curriculum to various languages in Nigeria, it's difficult because there are so many. What is, say you're Yoruba person. If I ask you what is kinetic energy in Yoruba, say it in Yoruba. The challenge there is we don't need you to say it in Yoruba actually, because there is evidence that when you're multilingual, your brain does a lot more activities and it opens the door to a lot more critical thinking. Multilingualism has evidence that it supports brain development in early childhood towards, so it's fine. But the point is that you need to, it's not as much as, again, like I said, language of instruction is more of language of clarification. So the contextualizing curriculum, one of the main entries is language. So use your local language to make it make sense. So at the end of the day, we're thinking sense-making education. Then the other place is in the content, which I think I've talked a bit about, because in the universe of content, you can go deep dive. But I think where I will focus on is how does it help in the world of work? If you're teaching, for instance, now, and I'll use primary education because a lot of people, you know, make connections with foundational education or even basic secondary education, junior secondary and stuff like that. If the idea about creative writing or writing essays, you know, everybody just has one way of teaching how to write essays. But the truth is that in today's world, nobody needs you to write an epistle to show that you're a good writer. A good writer, you could be a comic book developer, you could be someone who writes what's going on the billboards, you could be a script writer for movies, and you could be a chef who writes manuals. There's so many forms of writing. So again, the same concept, but how is it going to help in the world of work? That's contextualizing curriculum as well. And then I think the last point is the sociocultural part of it. You know, like anybody can come with interventions from any part of the universe and say, hey, come, this is how we think that you should teach this particular concept. And then if you take the book and it's all about snow that is in that book, well, there isn't any snow in our environment. It doesn't mean that we should not shoot for global competencies. You just need to now think through what is the degree to which I discuss snow. Okay, so if my entry point for snow is about the seasons and the weather, then I definitely want to interpret that particular concept in my social cultural context. And so whilst I'm telling them about snow and it happens in this part and that part of the world, I'm making that connection to my cultural environment where I don't have snow, but here's what I have. Okay, so that's how you want to think about contextualizing your curriculum. Just looking within your environment, find the entry point for language, using the language that you use to make it make sense. Find the entry point for content to make sure that it is connected to the world of work, and then find it that in the environment. I think by what I can stop with is this. Everybody, and this is a bit political. Everybody talks about when there was this movement about the herdsmen and all of those things. In my mind, I would think of it as a curriculum problem. And the reason why I've always thought of it that way is because we didn't really understand that the reason why these folks were moving up and about was because they wanted to graze. And there was a real problem around that for them, because that is life, that was their life's work. And while they were moving for a particular reason. And that reason was, Sheyi, because there was nowhere to graze. And so they had to go into other territories to, you know, try to overtake those territories, albeit them doing the absolute wrong thing, correct? But there was a problem, and that problem was I can't find anywhere to graze my animals. And you know what that problem is? That problem is climate change. But here we are within the curriculum, thinking through the reforms that we should have, we don't discuss climate change and its effect on lives and livelihoods. So in the East, it's about erosion. In the West, it's about in the North, it's about desertification and so forth and so forth. And those are what you can call contemporary issues in curriculum that need to be resolved within the curriculum cycle, whether it's from a national prescription in the national curriculum or to the state prescription in their scopes of work, or to a teacher who wants to be reconceptualized and say, you know what, these topics actually make sense in making children understand how climate change affects our world. And there are simple strategies for doing those things. So let me end there. I think I've said too much. I would have loved to say more, but I think this is fine.
No. So that's so beautiful. Thank you so much. You know, so many things were just going through my mind as you were talking, and I just want to thank you for this. You know, you said some very profound things, and that's the fact that you know, we have to move the curriculum from paper to life. You know, we should be able to make connections. In my book, I use the word relevance. We need to be able to relate the curriculum and create it to life. You know what is relatable, what they can see, and I think that's a major problem with our teachers. You know, so I'd like to ask you and the essay to the minister, and that is there's this dichotomy in the Nigerian space about the British and the Nigerian curriculum. How is that helping us? You know, how can we? I have to ask the question, you know, but I also don't know if you understand where I'm headed with this. The British curriculum and the Nigerian curriculum, you know, what can we do about that, such that we just have a curriculum in Nigeria? Okay, so I don't know if you understand my question.
I do.
Okay.
Let the honorable go first. Yeah.
Okay, so I like the honor. I like the essay. The honorable sir.
I'm being put on the spot here. Now, the era of cut and paste is simply over. We can't keep cutting from the British and pasting on the Nigerian space. Now, we are two different kind of people. Our tradition is different. Our culture is different. Our space is different. The dichotomy of our ethnicity is different. Therefore, we have to do things that is applicable to our environment. I remember when I was in the university in the UK, in those days, 70s, 80s, what used to happen is the industry will come into the classroom. We used to have lecturers who are in the industry. They were not lecturers. They would bring experts from industry to come and teach us the practical concept of the course we are doing. I'm a civil engineer. We have civil engineers from civil engineering firms, people who are actually at the echelon of their profession. They will come into the classroom to teach us. Now, they used to determine the curriculum as it will fit into the development agenda of the country. Now, that is something we need to do here. We need to begin to look at what will work for us, what will take Nigeria, without taking away our relativity with the global space. We still need to do things that is applicable to us here. There's no need just copying America and copying Britain. It's of no consequence. It becomes a convolution. People just don't understand what they're doing anymore. Now, it's important because I learned that from the UK, where I remember my lecturers in mathematics, Professor Chagwin and Plumpton. Now, Chagwin and Plumpton were people who were working in the industry. They wrote the curriculum for University of London. So all the London colleges were doing exactly what the industry wanted. And that is exactly what professionals We have academics who can do this for us. There is need to look at what do we need. And what we need out there should go back into the classroom. There must be synergy between academics and what obtains in the industry. So that's something that government has to look at. You see, there are a lot of things we need to do for reformation. For me, to reform any part of this country, we need to reform the education system. And like I say everywhere, tertiary education is not compulsory. No one is saying you must be a graduate of anything. But basic and secondary education must be solid. If you reform basic and secondary, tertiary will reform itself by extension. Therefore, you have to catch them young. You have to do the right things. Like I said before, when we heard, if you hear in those days that in the 60s, that our teachers were in the next village, the first thing that comes to your head is to run to your books, sit down, even when you are not reading, like I used to do. I wasn't reading, but I have to carry my book so that my teacher can come and see me as if I was reading. But nowadays, that doesn't happen. If a teacher scolds a child in school, a parent goes to school to rebuke the teacher. Where has our values gone? And like I said, everything starts from the home front. You know, when you're growing up as a child, your heroes are your parents. And if now parents are beginning to abdicate their responsibilities because they're chasing after naira and kobo, pounds and dollars. So therefore, instead of growing our children, we are simply rearing them. Other people are developing them for us. So there's a problem in this society that we need to address. Now, centering that to education, because education is not only about X, Y, Z, or D, Y, D, X. No. Part of education is part of home training. You know, it has to start from the home. And if you're not getting it right at home, the teachers can't get it right for you. I say to parents, if anything goes wrong in school, check yourself at home. That's where it all starts from. So it's important that whatever we did in the society, like, look at the country right now. There's no reason, you know, the way we did, there was a time in the construction industry, Nigeria brought in all these pitched roofs in Nigeria, where you have a very tall king post. Half of the height of your building is the height of your roof. It is preposterous to even begin to think in a hot country, you are incubating heat. That's what it means. You are incubating heat. And in a hot country, you don't need that. You need that in a cold country. And what amount of snowfalls do you want to get rid of from your roof that we need such buildings in Nigeria? What you need here is flat roofs with very slow pitch. But people just go abroad and bring what they see and bring it into Nigeria. So that's why we need to write a curriculum that is needed for our country, that is needed in tandem with what obtained globally. Of course, the YDX in Nigeria is still the YDX in America. Like I said to you, good medicine is good medicine. It doesn't matter where it is practiced. It's just that the way we do things here are simply different. Look at Nigerian doctors, Nigerian professionals outside of this country. They do extremely well outside of this country. And they are Nigerian graduates. They are Nigerian graduates. They graduated from Nigerian universities, and when they go out of this country, they excel because they studied through harsh conditions. When I was in secondary school, there was no light in our school. We used bush lamps and candles to study. That is not found nowadays anywhere in the world. But in Nigeria today, it's still obtainable. Even after my nearly 50 years out of secondary school, there are some schools that don't have light up till now. So we have problems. We have major issues. So everything we're doing here has to be applicable with what we need here without taking our eyes off the global inclusivity. There's need for us to be inclusive. At the same time, we have to be pragmatic and be practical about what we do. That's my view of it.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. All right. Over to you, Madam Rhoda.
So Seyi, I'm going to put you on the spot because that question was very private school oriented, because that is not the situation that in the public sector. It was a very private education oriented question. And so I'm going to address it from that angle, and I also try to address it from the public education angle. From the private sector angle, the problem with that is that we want to, because of the opportunities that avail children who are receiving private education, I think we lose a great opportunity of making what the honorable essay said, which is curriculum meeting industry. I think we miss an important point there when we overemphasize the outcomes or the curriculum outcomes from a curriculum that does not speak to the growth and development of the children and the society that they live in. So if it's for your child to wish away and run away to the England, so be it, all well and good. I'm happy for you. Fine. But where we in the curriculum often speak to many people about when choosing curriculum, when making curriculum choices in private education, is you don't want to pick a curriculum over another. That is absolutely the wrong way to go about your curriculum decisions. What you want to do is to pick best practice along subject lines and make it an integration of best practice, something we can call an eclectic curriculum design, to ensure that you are picking the best methodologies that make children or learners receive the knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes and competencies required for them to function. You see, we're all going through an education because we want to do what? Work. Contribute meaningfully to the society and give back. I don't know if there's any other, I mean, you can tell me if there's any other goal for education. To be self-sustaining, so that is you getting a job, to contribute meaningfully to your society if you happen, because that's what you should do as a citizen, because you have citizens' responsibilities. And then, of course, to give back where you feel that you should. Usually you will give back at least starting from your family. You know, when the honorable essay mentioned about is starting from home, I'm a believer of that. Curriculum requires a collaboration of all sectors: industry, home front, family, education, stakeholders and the leaderships within there. And of course, the entire, I don't know what I call it, ecosystem that makes somebody learn something. You see, you've often heard, you might have often heard, before I get to that child labor, my daughter this week had to go through, their school had to, because they were not compliant to the dates that were for midterms in Lagos State. They were forced to be compliant, so they pivoted to going to online school for them. And my daughter had a very bad behavior in the classroom, and she was reported. What's the bad behavior? She was making noise in the classroom. As far as I'm concerned, I consider it bad behavior, because that means that you were disrespectful to the students and the teachers while the lesson was going on. And somebody will say, you're taking it too far. No, you're not. I'm not taking it too far. There is decorum and there's behavior that's expected of every child, especially in an online space. You know, I talked about digital language. There's digital literacy. You need to understand the etiquette within all of those. And what did I make her do? I made her, doesn't need to beat and all this corporal punishment. No need. She wrote an email to me, write an apology letter to me, write an apology letter to her teachers and her students. I edited it, both of us did it, and then the next day she was go post it to all of the classes that she was having that day, and post it to the teachers that she had the classes of the day before. And then, of course, when they go back to resume school, she was going to walk through all of those classes and still give her apology. So I agree. There's the home front, because the value system has to be there. But you see, we used to talk about child labor. You know, you hear from the Western world, child labor. That's child labor because you have a social construct that gives them homes, and that gives them homes to live in, that gives young. If you look at 15th century England, there was what they're calling child labor in African context. Children were working those days. So in our context, when you look at public education, these children have to go back to support the families. It is not child labor. It is not. You can't call. You have to give it something else until you have given them a society that can give them a home, that they can go and take what's it called, they do it in the US, and they give you, what's it called? You can go and get free food. You don't have that. So then you now use that kind of language to communicate child labor from the context of Nigeria. No, what I'm trying to say is that it's not that it is not a form of labor of child labor. It's just that in our context, which is the reason why we're having this conversation, those children need to survive within their families, within their homes. They need to survive. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Wow.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, they need
perfectly well.
Yeah, they need to survive. So now coming to the crux of that question, which is that, you know, there is an integration that needs to happen. If the Singaporean math makes sense, use it. If the British language makes sense, use it. By the way, you could not teach his British history, right? Because what are they going to use it for? Of what use will it be to a child learning history from British curriculum? It needs to be international. A subsection of that history content needs to be international, not British, not alone. So you must teach the Nigerian history and teach all that kinds of history. So if it is science, if it's American science, that is the best, pick it. If it is, in terms of methodology, and again, it's about outcomes, all right? Don't worry, it's the country we have, the light is up. It's about outcomes, right? And so once you think about that, you definitely don't want to be stuck in the world of picking British curriculum. But I have to say, there is evidence and benefits in all of those different types of curriculum or curricula around the world. For example, if you do a clear investigation of biology in the IGCSE and biology in the WAEC, if you see those two examinations, the one that's coming from IGCSE, it gives multiple pathways to career. You will see the kind of assessment questions that are being asked of the children. But if you look at the one from WAEC, at least if I can do this case study, I did it about 4-5 years ago. If you look at biology exams with IGCSEs, look at biology exam in WAEC, the difference is price. Because the IGCSE in biology will allow you the experience, the curriculum experience was multiple pathways within biology. But the classroom experience of biology within WAEC is you must be a doctor. So you see, again, that's the thing. You want to think about which subject area has the best practice, that has evidence that will lead to outcomes. If it is Singaporean math, pick it, like I said. If it is American science, use it. If it is Nigerian math, use it. Whatever it is that works for you, because you want the children to get into a workforce, a workplace, and build the knowledge, skills, values, competencies, and attitudes, those things should always guide you. Should always, guide you for curriculum choices. Yeah.
Well, we heard you. We heard you perfectly. We heard you perfectly. Thank you so much. We shouldn't choose curriculum with the aim of sending our children abroad. You know, we should choose curriculum that will say that. I read it somewhere that you see, the school is not the school is life itself. You know, can you hear me?
Yeah, there's some break in your voice.
Okay, so the school is not where we pretend to be. It is life itself. So that's very, very profound. Thank you so much. So I just have one more question as we begin. And that is, you know, I've been a principal for some years now. One of the things I have challenges with is completing their scheme in the term. And I'm glad the essay, because the DQAs of the world, the ministries of this world. Can you hear me, please?
Can you repeat that again? I can.
Okay, can saying that teachers have this challenge about completing their scheme of work. So every term, the goal is usually to complete the scheme and not and one of the reasons.
We can't hear you. We
can't
can't
hear
hear you.
you.
I don't know if it's from your end. There's the wind. There's some kind of wind that's blocking your voice. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if there's some fan blowing or I don't know. There's
Can you hear me,
something.
please?
Yes. Yes, this is good.
Yes, now.
Yeah. Okay, you're back.
I was saying that teachers are more concerned about completing the scheme of work for the term. They are not really concerned about helping their students learn. One of the reasons is what I pointed out is the fact that ministries come to schools to inspect and ensure they act. So how can we begin to solve this problem such that, regardless of the scheme that you have for the term, you can still experience for your learners? I don't know if you understand my question.
No.
Yes. Well, I think I got the meat of what he's saying. He's saying that teachers have a need to want to cover their schemes of work. And that the reason why they do that is because ministry officials often put them on their toes to cover that scheme of work. What, I guess, to your question, can be done about that?
Yes. So moving from just content to context, moving from content to relevance. That's what I'm talking about. How can we begin to do that? And then we'll round off.
Okay. From my end, I think it's three levels.
Sorry, please.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm with you, please.
Right. Okay. From my end, I think it's 3 levels. Everything about education is multi-stakeholder management. And everybody who is within that hierarchy of management needs to understand that what we need to do for our learners today, regardless of the level of education, primary, secondary, tertiary, is that we need to be outcomes oriented. So you want to cover the students, not the curriculum. However, curriculum these days seem to be overburdened by too much of stuff that is not relevant. In that case, that's where curriculum reforms come. But again, with what we know that there are somewhat odd 30 billion cells something in our brain, and I hear that we don't even use up to like 30% of that. And so we are everything about the educational system needs to be ambitious, right? Thinking about context and the relevance of the contents that we have, we need to now start helping to upskill all the stakeholders within the education management system or within the authority, so that they understand what does it mean to cover curriculum. You see, the design of the curriculum in itself needs to help to support teachers to be able to deliver fully. So if you think about it, if in the whole year, and this is where they say data is king. The truth is that anybody without data is just a person with an opinion. So if you're designing a curriculum that has, say, in English language or mathematics or whatever it is, or a course in the university, and it takes a learner 20 hours to complete it, you have to look within the annual year. Do we have 20 hours within the academic, also the instructional hours in the learner's experience to cover that content? If we don't, then that content is overburdened. So data has to inform our development of content. And so that's another thing that needs to come. So how do we use data to inform the design of our educational programs? That's where the upskilling needs to come within the sector that designs the curriculum. And then back to the teachers who are now have to be innovative. Again, the reason why teachers, I feel, don't always cover as much as they can is not just because there's overburdened. Yes, let's imagine that it is. But the truth is that many strategies required for teachers to engage. Teachers don't do it. For instance, you have a 45-minute class and students use 15 minutes, 33% of that class to write a note. You have a problem. You have a problem. Because what they should do within a significant percentage of that class, and this is where data again should guide teachers all the time. What they should do is explore that concept, because it is what they know, not what they put down, that counts. It is that's what should happen. So again, teachers should begin to think through how are the strategies that can make me to expedite learning, or to, the way we say it in education, accelerate learning. And usually the answer is in student engagement, using student choice and voice. And so once teachers understand those strategies and having students take more action within an ownership of learning, you get to move faster with covering curriculum content. So that would be my my idea.
Thank you. And sir, what your contribution, sir?
Well, without having to repeat what Rhoda had said, I feel that content and context, they both have to do with, there must be a synergy between the two. There must be concerted effort for all stakeholders to design what will work and how it will work. Now, right now, our attention is basically on qualification. That let's do this so that this guy can get a paper qualification. That's of no use to anybody, because a lot of people have the paper qualification, they don't have the content. Therefore, you cannot give what you don't have. You know, it's imperative that we look deeper than we're looking right now. We need to probe the system, and that includes even our instructional materials, because we cannot stay in the olden ways of doing things. We have to move with time. Things are changing. Even look at the advent of COVID-19. Who would have thought that people could sit at home and take lectures? In those days, you need to be in the classroom. But now you can actually do it from the comfort of your home. What am I saying here? There is need for all stakeholders, the industry, government, private sector, everybody to get together to design a system that is applicable to the needs of this country, whilst we align with international standards. So it's imperative that that happens. If that doesn't happen, we will just be talking and talking and talking. Decision makers, stakeholders need to sit down around the table and decide that they're going to take our education system in a different direction. Right now, we're not in the right direction. I must, sadly, I have to admit that. But there's room for a lot of improvement. People like Rhoda need to be part of consortium, advising government, advising stakeholders. And I'm not saying this massage her ego, never met her before, but I believe she has a lot to give to us. So it's important. Now, we have BPE, which is set to reform a lot of things, but people see their role as being limited to privatizing industries. No, they have a job also